I'm Rachel,
I'm Ivy.
and we are Swords and Sapphics, a podcast all about queer media, representation, and women with a capital W.
Hello.
Hello.
Who are we talking with today?
We have a returning guest who we love very much.
We do.
One of our first guests we ever had in season one,
It's true.
Rebecca Thorne.
Yay!
We're going to
Yeah.
talk about TU at the Altar, which is the third book in the Tea and Tone series. When she was last here, we talked about the first book in the Tea and Tone series, Can't Spell Treason Without Tea.
Yeah,
So we've come full circle.
we did. It's true. We finished almost yeah. We have 4 series. She has 4 books. She has
Oh
more.
yeah, look at that.
She has 4 books in the series, yeah. Yeah.
Hey.
I just like to point out, right? As you'll be listening to the interview, at the beginning, we ask a few questions, of course, and when we were writing them down, Uh, Rachel was like, "It's sad that there's not the title of the first book that you could say because you always say it wrong." And then she figured out a question to put there because I always say can spell the treason without T, and she has a field day with it. And I tried so hard not to say it. I read it, and I still said it. And she just burst into laughing. So when you hear her laugh, that's why. She's laughing at me.
Yeah, I had to. It wouldn't feel like an interview without it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I do know.
Like a callback to the first time we were here.
Yeah. I did
And it
say
was
it every single time there, didn't I?
yeah.
Thank you for not sugarcoating it.
To be honest, wasn't I calling it Can't Spell Tea Without Treason? Or
Oh
was that
yeah.
still you? I can't remember now.
Oh yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't the easiest title. This one is See You at the Altar,
It's a good one.
which we haven't read yet.
We haven't. I'm so excited to. But
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to reread the first 2 books. First of all, I remember very little of it. I just remember like the feelings mostly. Like as
Mm.
I mentioned it, I do remember the vibes. Like I read the first book, it was autumn. And because it's an indie book, so like it's published like by Amazon and they have like very specific paper. And just the feeling of the book was just very specific. So like to this day, and I think it was during the time where I was also baking cinnamon rolls.
Mm.
It just like the vibe again, like unmatched. I even had tea out of nowhere just because they kept talking about tea when I was reading the book.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you do need to reread it. Because
They just
then,
wanted me to drink tea.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm British.
yeah.
Actually, that just provoked a memory in me. We asked Rebecca what her favorite flavor tea
Oh
is.
yeah, that's
Oh my
true.
God.
That's true.
I
That was a
don't
good
remember
question.
anything, but that just triggered something in me.
Yeah. It's been one hell of a ride these few years.
It has. And it's actually really nice to catch up with someone we've spoken to before.
I know, and
I
also
have
to see like the way not only them like grew, but also us like put it into perspective.
oh,
Like it's been huge for us. Like a lot of
I
things
didn't
happened.
I didn't think she was gonna remember us.
I didn't either. I'm not gonna lie to you. I hoped because I think we were very memorable.
I hope so.
But yeah,
If you could interview another guest a second time, who would it be?
it's a good question. I think before this, I would say Rebecca. I think. Oh, I think Posey. I think
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought you might say
I
that
thought
too.
you so yeah, yeah. Yeah, honestly, it's just she's doing well for herself. And it's lovely to see her grow and she's doing a lot of beautiful little things.
Yeah.
So yeah. How about you?
Oh, I didn't prepare myself for the
Yeah.
question even though I
Oh
was the
my
one.
gosh.
Oh my God,
I know.
I'm panicking.
I can see that. Yeah.
Let me
You
quickly
yeah.
look who this is.
Fun stuff. That actually brings me to the fact that on our website we have a landing page with all the guests we ever had, linked to the article. So like if you're looking for someone specific, you can know in what season and what episode they joined us. So that's makes it easier for you.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding me that. I
I
don't think we
really,
talked about it.
yes, you're so welcome. That's exactly, you know what?
Yeah.
I was just doing it for the bit.
Oh yeah, I could tell. Thank you.
Just wanted to give you the opportunity.
Yes.
I really enjoyed talking to Rose Sutherland.
Oh yes.
And I would never complain if we could get LM Juniper back on because I
I get it.
think we had a nice conversation.
Yeah.
Um, and I just enjoy talking to people who
Me
are
too.
interested in the same like writing stuff.
It would be great if we could do that more, but sadly, there's so many amazing people to interview. We
Yeah.
have just limited episodes and we're tired most of the time, so.
It's true. It's very true. So tired. I mean, we have to say, like, we do sacrifice our weekends to for
Yeah,
this. And it's worth it. It's always worth it, but it's also hard work.
two things can be true.
Exactly. We love
Yeah,
it. We do it because we love it. But we're gonna complain about it sometimes too.
and by sometimes we mean actually
Most.
every day, like most of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
No matter how excited we are. Yeah. But that is what it is. It's life.
It is. And then we always have a good time in the end.
Yeah. Besides, I'm Czech. I complain about everything all the time. That's in my nature.
I am a Virgo. Complain about everything all the time.
But really, it just makes sense. So the interview is slightly longer than they usually are because it was difficult to cut ourselves off because Rebecca has so many interesting things to say, and it's so easy to talk to her, and I could do that for hours. So
Yes.
we're gonna cut our part short
Mhm.
and just go and enjoy our interview.
Thank you for joining us again. For new listeners, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rebecca Thorne. I am a sapphic writer of LGBT literature and, fantasy, sci-fi, romance, pretty much anything along those lines, but I dabble in a lot of genres. I have been traditionally published and self-published, and now I am kind of something in between where I do both. And I am very passionate about publishing education, and that is pretty much where I tend to spend my time.
Oh. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about you at the altar. What can readers expect from the third book in this series?
The third book in the series is going to be it's this book was the hardest to write because it's more of like a heist story, and heist stories are really complicated because you have to know what everyone is doing at every given point in the story, and like who knows what and when they find out, and like dramatic reveals. I was not prepared for how intense that gets. So To You at the Altar, it follows Kianthe and Reyna as they get married, which is very exciting. They got engaged in book one and they are finally tying the knot. And in the meantime, they are also using the wedding as a front to overthrow the evil Queen Tulane. So it's a wedding and a coup, and it's just chaos.
So excited.
Yeah.
What has it been like to have such a huge growth in readership since the publication of You Can Spell the Tree? You Can Spell the Without Trees.
It's been kind of crazy, honestly. I knew that the book was popular when I was indie because I was making really, really good sales on it as an indie author. Like, I mean, I hit my first book that I ever published was a middle grade book called The Secrets of Star Whales, and that was with a mid-level press named Jollyfish Press. And they barely did distribution. They didn't really get the book out to many places. I actually ended up getting the rights back because by their standards, it was technically out of print because it sold so few copies. And and I was just like, okay, so give it back to me, you know. So they gave it back to me, but my standing like guideline for that was 1,000 copies because Star Whales sold about 1,000 copies. And with Treason, when I was indie, I passed that in like 2 months, which was wild because that book had been out for like 2 years before that point. So it was one of those things where I was like, I knew that there was an audience for it. I knew that it was popular. But with the distribution that Tor has added to the mix, once my big publisher got involved, they have put it in I mean, like I get messages from people all over the world that they found this book. You know, I get messages, and we do sell like individual language rights to different countries, but between the US and the UK, they own most of the English rights. So like I'll get messages, like I just got a message from somebody in New Zealand that said they found it in their local bookstore in like this tiny backwater part of New Zealand, which was really cool. And I just feel like that is a pretty big testament to how the series has grown. Like I don't think that it would, like, I knew that it would find readers if it was available to readers, but I feel like that was a really big piece, was getting it available to readers in all of these different areas. And it's been really, really cool to see over the last year how this series has grown.
Yeah.
Oh.
I have a little side question. Have you
Yeah.
noticed like a pickup of your middle grade books in sales wise since?
You know, the middle grade book is out of print right now. So I do plan on republishing it at some point as an indie author, but right now, middle grade is a really, really tough sell. There's only like 8 or 9 authors, and they dominate like 90% of the middle grade space. And all the new ones that try to come in are just like fighting for that last like 10% share. Those are not official numbers, so don't quote me on that, but it's something like ridiculous like that with the middle grade section. So I am holding on to that book until I feel confident that the market will support it. It's a pretty timeless book. I can republish it at any point. But my other book sales, I do think, have been benefiting from it. I have 2 other indie series or indie books. I have well, 3 if you count the craft book. I have The Gilded Abyss, which is actually going to be republished by my publisher in the fall, which is very exciting. So that one should see some really nice distribution as well soon. But that one has been selling consistently since pretty much day one. And then I have The Day Death Stopped, which is the best book I've ever written and the one book that no one has read. So I do get consistent sales with that one as well. It's pretty nice. I don't really check Amazon too much to track those sales anymore because I mostly have other things to do at this point. Like I know they're selling consistently. I've watched them for long enough that I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I'll get a check at the end of the month, but I don't know how much it's going to be for. And I just kind of go from there. So I do think that it has helped to have a backlist because I think there's a lot of things that readers can find from me. And depending on their vibe and like how they're feeling that day, they can pretty much find a book that'll suit their need. But overall, Tomes and Tea is the bestseller for sure.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, I do remember when The Abyss came out, and it was really funny because the submarine went down.
Ocean Gate, yeah. Yeah,
And I
I
think
actually
amazing marketing.
I just redid so we just did copy edits for Gilded Abyss for the republication. So they're going to be reprinting it and everything. So I didn't change too much. I was pretty happy with how that book was, but there were a couple things that I like amped up, a couple areas that I kind of toned down a bit. Mostly with like the characterization and the personalities. And when it came time to do the copy edits, I got to change the dedication. And the last dedication was to anyone who fought for their life in Rapture, which is the city in BioShock, the video game. I was like, so glad to know I'm not the only one scarred by that game, because that was like a very devastating part of my childhood, was playing that game and thinking it was this fun underwater city and then just like blood everywhere, you know? And so I based that book off of BioShock. So I felt like that was a good dedication at first. But for the reprint, my dedication is, it just says, Ocean Gate happened 15 days after this book was released. That's it. There's no dedication. I just thought you all should know. And that's all I said on the matter. But it was like such a fine line to walk, because I'm like, do I make fun of the dead billionaires? Like, that feels insensitive if it was anybody else, but because they're like stupid billionaires,
yeah.
do I make fun of them, or do I just like? So I was just like, Ocean Gate happened 15 days. That's the dedication.
Do with that what you will.
Do with that what you will. Interpret this how you would like.
Amazing.
Just stating facts, you know.
It's either a tribute or a celebration.
Right, exactly.
Your books always include a fun, diverse cast of characters. Do you have any favorites outside of the main characters?
Yes. Feo is my favorite in the Tomes and Tea series, for sure. I don't know. Well, I do know why I like Feo. Feo is so arrogantly confident, and then they get everything they want. Like, and I just feel like there's something so beautiful about like knowing exactly who you are, knowing exactly what you want, going after it with audacity, and then getting it every time. And I feel like that's just so fun to watch and so fun to write. Like, every time Feo comes into a scene, they just dominate that scene. There's no, this is the kind of personality they have. Like, they come in and they're quieter in their personality. So I feel like a lot of readers might not recognize it, but like every time they come in, they change the narrative. And I feel like that is so fun for me as a writer. So they're definitely my favorite side character.
Is it hard to not want to write a spin-off for them?
I actually have an idea. I don't know if I'll write it. We'll see. But after the fourth book comes out, uh, I'm pretty vague about some things in the epilogue, and I feel like I could tackle that in a standalone novella pretty easily. I have a plot idea, but yeah, I think there is like a downfall to being like so arrogantly confident all of the time. Like they have confidence, but a lot of times it borders on arrogance, which is like obviously a negative trait. So I think that when it comes down to Feo, part of their story is going to be learning what really matters in life and whether or not it's the things that they actually wanted to go for that they thought they wanted because they kind of swore off people because people kind of failed them at every turn, right? So like now that they have people surrounding them that will not fail them at every turn, how does that affect the way that they pursue life? You know, I just feel like there's a lot to explore there.
Yeah.
So please write it. Thank you.
I've got ideas. I feel like that story would be a lot of fun, and it would probably take place about 2 or 3 years after the first quartet. So we'll see.
I'd like anything from the world because it's just I to this day I remember the vibe that it like the atmosphere that I felt when reading the first book, and it's just unmatched, and I haven't matched it since, I have to say. So
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
I personally would love to see more crocheting.
Truly, though, one of the things, the people in the podcast can't see this, but if you look up here, all of these guys, oh my God, they're right over here. These are all crochet things, except for the yellow one, the bee. My sister made that, but all of these are crocheted pieces that people have made me before and then given me on my book tours. So I put them up on my shelf because I think they're so cute. But yeah.
Amazing. Have any reader responses surprised you in regards to which character they most connected with?
Feo and Wylan, and they're like it always comes back to Feo. Everything comes back to Feo. But Feo and Wylan, I feel like that did surprise me at first. And now I've gotten used to it. I feel like I can pretty much anticipate that people are going to be like swooning over those two guys. Two people, but I feel like Feo and Wylan initially did surprise me a lot because they were very much background characters with not a lot going on between the two of them, but because they had their own plot in the first book, and then because they had like that will they won't they kind of tension throughout the entire series, it's a little bit of the question with them, and I did not expect readers to latch onto that so intensely.
One thing about readers is they'll latch onto any gaze they can find.
It's so true.
There's a big sense of community and found family in these books. What made you want to explore that, and was it a conscious choice going into the writing of it?
Yeah, I think that found family is one of the cornerstones, if not the cornerstone, of cozy fantasy as a genre. I feel like if you're going to be writing cozy fantasy, like you might have some kind of shop creation, you might have like a slice of life, you might have some more, some higher stakes, but no matter what, the characters are going to have some kind of found family by the end of the story. And I think that that is something very beautiful about the cozy fantasy genre overall. So when I wrote that genre, all I'd had to read at that point, this book was 2022. And it was right after Legends and Lattes had come out, but before any of the others had really entered the scene. So the only book I really had to compare it with for like the official cozy fantasy genre was Legends and Lattes. So I knew that I needed to pull key ideas. Like I spent some time analyzing that book to figure out like what worked for it and how I could replicate that in my book to grab that same readership without mimicking it entirely. And I'm glad to see that like over the quartet, that book has done a complete divergence from where mine is. Like I feel like my series has grown organically over the course of 4 books, which has been really nice to see. But the first book is very Legends and Lattes with intention. So when I was writing that book, that found family was a very key part of it. I knew that I needed these 2 characters to leave everything that they had before. It was fun for Kianthe because she didn't really have much before to begin with. But Reyna did have a very nice connection with all of the Queensguard that was there. And that was actually something I was able to explore again in book 3, where she's not a Queensguard anymore, but she's able to kind of re-befriend, like refriend those people that she knew from her past. So that is kind of fun, I think, in book 3. We get to see them kind of like making amends, Ven, especially her like extra Queensguard friend that was like always like her partner in crime when they were Queensguards. Now he comes back and they get to have like a really nice conversation where they kind of understand where each other was coming from in a way that he really wasn't in a position to do in the first book. So it was very fun. It was really fun to kind of pull back that found family. I think that that's part of the reason why in this series specifically, every book that I write is my favorite book after. I think I love book one, then I wrote book two and I was like, oh, book two is way better. Then I wrote book three and I was like, oh, book three is way better. And then I wrote book four, and book four is still to this day my favorite book in that whole quartet. And I think it's just because we get to see this found family growing, and you really get the benefit of all of these new characters coming in and really starting to become people in their own right, which is cool.
Amazing. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
Book four is so good. I feel like if I could make a plea to anybody listening, if you enjoy any of the books at all, buy book four because it's the best of the four. It's so good.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I remember last time you was just writing book two and we got so excited about the pilot.
I know.
Yeah, you guys have been doing this for a long time. Like, I'm so impressed with how it's been going. And are you enjoying the podcast? Like, do you guys enjoy doing all of this?
We love it. We've gotten to talk to so many amazing people recently.
That's so cool.
Well. But
yeah, I remember you guys had like just started when we first chatted. It was so fun.
We were on our first season, and now we're doing this for fourth year or fourth, I think.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's honestly, it's wild, yeah.
This is so cool. I love that.
And like Kianthe and Reyna, you recently got married. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did any experiences overlap? You did have a sword at your wedding as well.
Surprisingly, I wrote these books years before any kind of wedding thing happened. So like if it happened the way that it did in the book, it's mostly coincidence. I do feel like I wrote book one in 2022. I wrote book two in the beginning of 2023. I started dating my girlfriend at the time in early 2023, like January. So I was writing Pirates while I was starting to date her. And then 6 months later, I wrote Alter. That was in August of 2023. And then in November of 2023 is when I wrote Alchemy. And I wrote Alchemy in like 9 days, like that book, and then like edited it in like 3 more. So like the book that we sent to print was literally 11 days total or 12 days total. Like it was wild, like from start to finish, like creation to what we sent to copy is like 11 days.
Like good for you, but like come on.
I know it was wild. I wrote for 7 days straight. My goal was 10,000 words a day. And I was aiming for 80,000 words. And I wrote the first 7 days, 10,000 words a day. And then the nano blew up, like the NaNoWriMo madness happened. And that kind of derailed me for like 20 days of November. And so I finished it up at the very end of November. And then, and then they sent back, like I didn't even edit it. I sent that version off to my editor. And then they sent back some suggestions and I spent another 3 days fine tuning those. But like the book was good. Like it's like the epilogue, right? Like by the time you get to the end of a book, it's usually faster than writing the beginning because you have to establish everything at the beginning. So like if you look at book 4 as like the end of a quartet, it makes sense why that book was the fastest because we knew, like I know the world building, I know the characters, I knew everything. But yeah, so like I was just starting, like we hadn't even decided to get married yet by the time I wrote book 4 of this series. And then she proposed to me on Treason's release date. So Treason came out last year and my first book event, she proposed at that event, which was very lovely. If you've ever read Sonora Reyes's books, Sonora Reyes was the one who helped like orchestrate that proposal. So they were the moderator for me on that event. And then they coordinated like behind my back with my wife to figure out how they were going to do that. So like there was like a mail-in question that my wife had sent and it was like very like, you've changed my life. Everything you do is amazing. Like I'm so in love with you. And I'm just like, this is a weird question from a reader. But I figured it. I mean, I figured it out pretty quickly. My wife is not very sneaky. She tries to be very sneaky, but that day she was like, I think I need a purse. I think I need a purse tonight. And I was like, a purse? You never wear, like neither of us wear purses. We never we put things in pockets and then we just carry shit. Like we don't have purses. So the fact that she was like, I need a purse. I'm like, you're breaking your ring, aren't you? And she's like, no. I'm like, mm-hmm. So like I kind of knew it was coming, but it was a really fun time. So yeah, anything that happens and I mean, I think that I put a lot of my hopes and dreams into this book series. So like the eloping thing, it's funny because in book 2, they mentioned specifically that they want like a small intimate wedding where like it's, you know, just them doing their own thing with maybe a few close friends. And then in book 3, without really any kind of warning, they are into this massive wedding where they're inviting half the realm, and it's like the event of the century, right? Like, and I did that strategically because I was hoping readers would notice like how things changed and why, because like it was never about the wedding in book 3, it was always about overthrowing the queen with a bunch of witnesses. So the wedding was a good excuse for that. So yeah, it was kind of fun to do that. We didn't overthrow anybody on our wedding.
Oh, maybe
We
next,
did we
maybe during
yeah.
like renewing your vows, there's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
many
Maybe
people to
maybe for renewing
overthrow.
our
Like you
vows.
have so many
Yeah.
chances.
We did bring our swords and got some really good pictures with our swords out in the Colorado wilderness, which was fun. So yeah.
I've seen them. Like that's a goal. Like amazing.
Mm.
Pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
we were really excited to be able to take those photos. They were awesome. So
Good. Amazing.
yeah.
But what was your favorite part about writing this book? Especially with the grandma. We sort of went through that. But yeah.
I think my favorite part of writing this book was, well, this book, I'm going to be honest, book 3 was not my favorite book to write. I think that my favorite part was the dragons. There's 2 baby dragons that are kind of running havoc around, you know, Tawny, and Ponder, the griffin that's a baby in book 2, is kind of like their ringleader. So she's like a teenager now, and she's just like, you will do as I say. And these 2 like younger kids are just like, yeah, okay, but we're also going to do our own thing because we're kind of crazy. And she's like, no, you do what I say, right? Like she's like the bossy older sister. And this one is really fun to watch. So I think the dragons were definitely my favorite part. But overall, this book took a long, like if I wrote book 4 in like 11 days, you know. Book 3 took me, I want to say like 3 months, like, which is long for me, you know. Like I think it took me like 8 weeks to write the first draft, and then I definitely spent another 4 to 6 weeks editing it, just because there was so much going on. I had to completely reorganize the beginning of the story, just because of the way that like the setup changed, like the way that they moved through that first day didn't make a lot of sense when I looked back at it objectively. So I had to like move this chapter here, change this here. But the minute you start moving chapters around, you have to change what everybody knows in every line because it's a heist. And like if you move this chapter here where they all knew this, and then you put it in the beginning of the book where they know none of it, you have to go back in and completely change conversations. It took forever. I definitely do not recommend it.
So no more heist books.
Yeah, no more. Yeah, well, and like I'm laughing because people always ask me what genre would I like to write that I haven't written yet, and my answer is I would love to have written a mystery. I want to have written a mystery.
Yeah.
I don't want to write a mystery. I want to have written a mystery, because mysteries are just like heists. Like everybody has to know something. You have to plan out exactly where every character finds out things. You have to plant evidence from chapter 1 that comes back at the very end. And I do a lot of that stuff intuitively for like fantasy books, but if you're planning it, it's a whole different ballgame. And it's just, yeah. So I want to have written a mystery.
Good.
So you started the series as an indie author and now you're traditionally published. What has the journey been like for you? And have you had to adapt anything through the process?
So many things. I was originally traditionally published, then I went indie, then now I'm traditional again, and I still do both, question mark. It's on a bit of a pause right now with the indie stuff, just because of the way that like the publishing schedules worked out. My publisher doesn't want me putting out an indie book too close to any of the releases for the traditional books, and they're putting out these traditional books like 2 or 3 times a year. So like this year we literally have 3 books coming out. So we had Alter in March, we have Alchemy in August, and then we're re-releasing Gilded Abyss in November. So there really isn't a lot of time to do indie publishing this year specifically, and probably there won't be for next year either. Maybe in the beginning of the year, if I was gonna do like a Kickstarter or something, it would probably happen in like January or February. But yeah, it's been an interesting process. Going from traditional to indie was very liberating, like very liberating, because I had been told for 8 years before that point by my agent, by the other authors that I was with, by the query, you know, like the editors that we were submitting to. It was just like, here's what we want you to write. Here's how we want you to write it. Here's the way that you're going to have to do it if you want to be popular. If you want to achieve this goal, here's all the things that you have to do to achieve this goal. And it felt very restricting for me in a way where I was like, well, that stuff only matters as long as readers care about it. And I'm talking to my readers and I think that they want this instead. But the industry was like, no, I don't think they do. So when cozy fantasy came out, it really felt like one of the things that they kept telling me for 8 years was amp up the stakes, more stakes, kill somebody, put in a big illness, an explosion, right? Like there's an assassination, like it's every chapter had to be something intense. And I wrote that for years and years. And I just wanted a freaking break, man. So when cozy fantasy came out and it was like low stakes are now acceptable, and in fact they're desired, I was like, oh, well, that's the place I want to be then for a little bit. Not forever, but like for now, I want it to be like more cozy. And it was really nice to be able to kind of self-publish and write what I want. And then on my platform side, like I spent so many years on Twitter trying to create a a platform for myself where I could interact with people the way that I currently do today. And it was not working on Twitter. It was not working on Instagram. I could not figure out what the special sauce was, right? And then the minute I left traditional publishing and went indie, and that's also the time I got on TikTok. And so all of a sudden I didn't have an agent telling me you can or can't say this on social media. You don't, so all of a sudden it was like I got to pull the veil back on all of these things I learned for 8 years in traditional publishing, and I was able to kind of like talk about all that stuff, and that was really exciting. And so I feel, and then my viewership flew through the roof because I'm saying a lot of these things that like a lot of authors know but are not allowed to physically say. So even when my publisher came on board, we had to have a discussion about like, hey, transparency in the industry is a really big part of my platform, and that platform is something you're hoping to leverage for book sales. You need to let me keep talking about this stuff. And they have pretty much backed off from a lot of that. Like there's a couple things that I'm not really allowed to say, but for the most part, they're like, yeah, Rebecca's good. She's got what she needs and she's, doing what she is,
Yeah.
So it's been pretty interesting on that front to kind of see the difference between the two.
Wonderful. What was it like to go back to the first and second book in the series and to just I think you rewritten some parts and edited some parts? What was that like?
Yeah, it's complicated because I write multiple books and they're all different genres, and then I go back in and I edit different genres, so that can be a little disconcerting sometimes. So like I'll write like a cozy book, like just I'll give you an example. Just in January, I'm doing a new cozy sci-fi series. And it should be really fun. It's going to be like Legends and Lattes meets Firefly, right? Like, or Mass Effect. And it's really fun. I'm very excited. So I was writing that cozy sci-fi in January and getting like very in the cozy vibes, all found family, all this fun stuff. And then they sent me back the edits for Gilded Abyss, which is like death and murder and dismemberment and sadness. And,
Uh-huh.
and I had to like and there's a deadline for it, right? Like it had to be done by this time. So I had to put the sci-fi on pause to go to Gilded Abyss, and wrenching myself out of that cozy space and putting me back into a thriller space was difficult and kind of frustrating. So normally I try to avoid that type of thing. Normally I look ahead at my publishing schedule and I'm like, okay, I have this month and this month to write this next book. Then I'm going to edit in these months. But sometimes I can't track what the publisher is doing on the back end. So I'll just get an email randomly one day that's like, hey, here's the edits for this book. And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that book. And I forgot that needed to be done.
Yeah.
So it's been a process to kind of learn how to balance those things together.
Good.
And as you mentioned, you do put out a lot of advice. Why is it so important for you to be transparent about the publishing industry?
Yeah, I feel that's a good question. You're the first one to ask me that. I feel like I feel like I was helped so much when I was new, and I spent so many years trying to figure it out on my own before I realized the essential benefits of getting a community around you. So, like, I queried 3 novels over 3 years, and I amassed almost 300 rejections before I got my agent. And I think that I could have cut that time down by a third. Like, I think I could have gotten an agent on my first book if I had been smart enough to ingrain myself in a community beforehand and learn from them. Because it wasn't until book 3 that it was like, oh, you need to edit or you're not going to be competitive. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, no, I don't need to edit. My books are good. And then I realized that, like, no, you actually do need to learn to edit. So it was like learning this whole cornerstone of a book that, like, no one had told me I needed to do before, because before it was just me writing for my friends. And they're like, no, you're the best author of all of us, Like, so I was like a big fish in a small pond. And then I got into this big pond and was confused about why I wasn't succeeding in this area. So I think that is part of the reason why it's so important for me with publishing. I also have that like ADHD sense of justice, like, that like that ADHD, like, how fucking dare you try to pull this wool over this person's eyes when they're too stupid to know, like they're too young of a writer to know better. Like there were so many areas where I could have been pulled into that same predatory trap, and that angers me as an established author. Like there's a lot of, like, people don't realize how valuable their books can be, and they sign, for however much time we spend writing these books, you kind of like sign them away in a second, right? Like people get a contract and they'll make a decision in 24 hours. So I'm like, how long did you spend writing that book? Do you really want to make this decision in 24 hours? Like, do you want to sleep on it for a bit and think about it? Like, so I just feel like that is part of the reason where it's just like that, like, sense of justice, where I'm like, if I can make a video that helps somebody avoid years and years of drama because they signed a bad contract, I would like to help with that. If I can make a video that saves someone 3 years, that just means that we get better books faster because they didn't have to waste 3 years of the querying trenches because they didn't know that editing is essential,
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of where my experience comes back.
Well, on behalf of all authors, thank you, because it is so helpful. And when you're an outsider, it is you just don't know things, and nobody's
Yeah.
there to tell you things.
Well, and it's hard because, like, there's so much, like, I feel like I experienced this in different industries. So like recently I was like, I wonder what it's like to make a video game. Like maybe I want to look into making a video game of some of my IP, right? And I started exploring it, and I kind of hit this point where I was like, oh, this must be how new authors feel when they come into the industry. Like for me, I look at the industry and I'm like, oh no, these things, and they all make sense. And here's how they all fit together, And I know that because I've been in the industry for so long. When I went into the indie video game space, it was like I felt like someone had just dropped 18 like college sized textbooks on my desk and was like, you're going to need to know all this before you can navigate this space, and like you're going to make problems and mistakes, and like you can watch 3,000 hours of YouTube videos and still not know. And I feel like I was so overwhelmed that I kind of shut down and like backed away from that space for a bit because I was like, I don't know where I'm navigating this. I don't know how, like, what I'm doing here. And then I thought about it and I was like, that must be how new authors feel. Like when you're coming in and you're trying to publish, you were doing this thing that, like, I play video games all the time. I thought I knew. And then I get in this space and I realize there's a whole separate industry behind just playing the game. And I knew logically that was there, but like when I dove into it, I was shocked at how complex it seemed. Like I wish I could find the Rebecca Thorne of the video game industry to kind of break it down for me and show me what is going on, because I feel like there's so many people and I don't know who to trust, and I don't know who's giving good information and who's giving bad information. And that is the same in the industry for publishing. Like there's a lot of people talking and teaching, and some of it is not good. So
Yeah. What is the best advice you've ever either received or offered to someone else, or both? Give us all the advice.
I think the best advice that I ever received was to not work, and this is controversial. It depends on the author. Someone told me when I was brand new not to waste time writing a sequel until the first book has been published, because you don't know. And if you're indie publishing, you kind of want to wait and see how that book is going to do, if it's going to be worth your time. Some indie books flop. So writing a sequel, which takes months or years, could waste you months or years of making this a viable career for yourself. Whereas if you find that one book that becomes successful quickly, and by flipping through a bunch of different ideas until one of them sticks, you might be able to go back to those other ideas later and make them amazing in a way that, like, your readers now are like, well, I'll read anything XYZ author writes. So I'll go back and I'll read this backstory, book that they had, this backlist book. And so I think that was very useful advice for me. So Pirates was actually the very first sequel I've ever written. And I've been writing, Treason was my 15th book, and Pirates was my 16th, and Pirates was the very first sequel that I ever wrote. So I feel like that was very good advice as a new author. And I know it's controversial because I know some people have like they have the Monolith series in their head, right? They're like, it's 16 books, it's an epic fantasy, and it's going to go this exact way. And I'm just like, okay, but if book one doesn't sell, you're going to be sitting on 16 extra books or 15 extra books that are not helping you. And then you spent a lot of time becoming a good author in this exact one area. But now if you need to branch out into a different area, you're basically starting from scratch, except for the writing style. So, I don't know. I felt like that was really good advice. If I had to give advice to authors now, like I said, that one is controversial. I know some people are not going to want that advice. If I have to give advice to an author now, I think it would be to keep your day job and to find a day job that you don't
Yeah.
hate. Because I feel like the authors who sign those books away in the swipe of a pen in 24 hours are the authors who are desperate to make this a career. And they're usually desperate to make it a career because they're struggling financially or they hate their day job. And I feel like that puts you in a much worse position to negotiate for future contracts. So like if you don't need the publisher and the publisher knows it, they might be inclined sometimes to offer you better stuff because they know you're not going to just jump at it, right? Like that's the negotiation, that's the business. And I feel like you'll be a happier, healthier author overall if you can find a day job that keeps your hands busy, and then you come home at night and you write for fun, and that keeps your brain busy. I just feel like that's a winning formula for everybody. If you can find a job that you genuinely enjoy, a job that you probably wouldn't quit even if you made it big, then you're going to have a much better time pursuing this for 5, 10, 15 years rather than every day feeling like a devastating slog. And then when you get that one rejection that you were holding out hope for 4 years, and it just crushes you because you have nothing else. Like if you have nothing else in life, that one rejection from an agent, which they just sent it with us, send in there, and it's like a second of their day and they're moving on, right? But with you, it could be like the most devastating thing that's ever happened to you to get rejected by this agent or by this editor. So I just feel like that's, find a day job that you don't hate and keep it.
Yeah, I have to second that because I lessened my freelance work for a contract recently, and publishers are very slow and don't keep to their
Uh-huh.
words on things. And it was annoying.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like so for example, we started, yeah, publishing is super slow. So if you're indie, you can get paid faster. Like
Mhm.
indie pay, assuming your book succeeds, which is always a question with indie, but if your book does well, you get paid in 60 to 90 days. And that's great. And then that's monthly income consistently, which is why I keep publishing, like self-publishing, because I like that extra nest egg at the end of the month. Like it's not a lot. It's like $1,000 or $500 sometimes, but it helps, like it's something that can keep my business afloat while I'm making this extra money with my publisher. With my publisher, we got, so in January 2023 is when we started getting publisher interest for the Tomes and Tea series. Tor UK jumped on board at the end of February. Tor US jumped on board in the middle of March. And we were negotiating those contracts, no joke, until June. And the only reason that we wrapped them up as quick as we did is because the Tor US ended up with the German rights and they wanted to sell the book in German. And the German publisher came back to Tor US and said, you have 24 hours to get Rebecca Thorne to sign this. So they basically sold rights that they didn't technically have because we hadn't signed the contract in the US yet. And like it was all like verbal agreements, right? Like we all knew that we were going to sign those contracts. There was no problem with it, but they negotiated that contract like 4 days after that German deal. But we had been waiting for 3 months before that point, like fine tuning everything, and it's just a really long process. So I got paid in July for my contract signing. As an author, you finish the book and you're like, oh, well, here's my book, hand it to the publisher, publisher pays me, everything's great. And that is not actually what ends up happening with most publishers. They have to accept it's published,
Mhm.
written and accepted by the publisher. And that and accepted gives them all of the freedom in the world to basically be like, oh yeah, no, we got your manuscript on the due date that you said, but we're not actually going to edit it for 7 more months. And then we'll hand it back to you to get the edits again. And then in 9 months, we might pay you for that manuscript. So you write the book planning for that money, and then you don't actually end up getting that money for another 9 months, if, or a year or 3 months, no one knows, right? Like it's at the whim of the publisher and how many books they have on their plate at any given point. So I can roughly look out and see, now that I've done a couple with my publisher, I can guess how many months in advance they need to have a manuscript done before it has to be sent to production. So I can use my release date as kind of like a walking it back to expect this type of money around this time, but it's always like a 3 month range. And sometimes even that's not accurate, like you just have to kind of expect that some months or some years you won't get paid in a certain period of time. So like for this example, we were working on this cozy sci-fi contract, and we started, like, I pitched this book to them in June, July, we pitched this book to them. They accepted it in late August. And then we started negotiations on the contract in September. And I was like, oh, this will be done by Christmas for sure. Thinking about how the Tomes and Tea series went, I was like, oh, it'll probably
Yeah.
be done by Christmas. And that was not the case. It did not get done by Christmas. It was not done until the end of February, middle of March. So they were negotiating for 7 months, 8 months, and that's actually fast for some publishers.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like, again, like if you have the chance to keep your day job, I recommend keeping whatever income stream you know is reliable because publishing will never be it. Because like we could get even into further stuff. Like we could get into the idea of like, well, if you wrote a book and the book was successful but not amazingly successful, the publisher may not want you back for another series. Like they may not buy another book from you. So you
Yeah.
might have written this book that you think is really good. You might have quit your job thinking I got this one publication contract, surely more are coming. And then the publisher is like, no, we're not actually going to buy another book from you. So until you have like multiple series out or like a New York Times title, like even the USA Today titles don't really do as much as like the New York Times bestseller title. You are kind of on edge about like every book's performance to see whether or not it's all going to make your publisher want you more for future novels. So keep your day job.
Yeah.
Like it's just like that sounds so defeatist, but like keep your day job.
No.
Don't be stupid.
I think like especially with writing, it being so like such a hard passion thing, it's important to keep, the business part, to keep talking about the business part and sort of the realistic part of it too. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I always say that writing is a creative art
Yeah.
and publishing is a business.
Yeah.
So, like, the minute you decide you don't want to just write for yourself, the second you decide that you're moving into a publishing sphere where you want others to read your work, you're not in a creative sphere anymore. You don't get the luxury of deciding what goes into every book and how it's going to look every
Mm.
time, right? Like, even the biggest authors have to make some changes for the public that they're portraying to. And I do think the more famous you get, the more leeway you get. But even that kind of comes with that qualifier, right? That the publisher always has the final say in a lot of things. And a lot of times they work really well with you, but sometimes they don't. I think that the business of publishing is something that people need to be talking about because there is inherently that capitalist side of, well, I'm good at this and I like this, so maybe I can make money doing this. And that is lovely if you can support yourself that way. Like, of course, we all want to support ourselves off of our art, but it's not art by the time you get to the publishing sphere. Like, it's not art anymore. It's just business. It's money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I maybe this is going too far into it now. How much time do you have to talk
I
about
love
it?
going far into it, to be honest. I'll sit and
I
talk about
think,
this all day.
yeah, it's for me, like I've been very vocal recently about it because like I'm disabled, so like I couldn't get a full-time job. So like I need publishing to work for me. And
Yeah.
well, I'm not, like putting all my eggs in the basket. I'm also autistic, so when they say they're going to do this at this time and it's going to work like this, I believe them,
Hmm.
and it's not
Hmm.
always true.
No,
It
no.
does kind of feel like there's it's not like you have to have some form of privilege to be in the publishing industry as a writer because
1000%.
yeah, you even need like that. Not everybody has that time to go home after a
Hmm.
full-time job and go and write. And that's
Hmm.
it really kind of cuts off some of probably the most creative and talented people we have.
It really does. And it's kind of devastating. I feel like I was single for most of my 20s. Like I dated people on occasion, but I covered myself financially all through my 20s. I had roommates, I got cheaper places to live, like I saved my money the way I could, but I feel like a lot of the people who were able to make publishing work for them long term is because they had a partner who gave them 6 to 9 to a year months off, right? Like they have somebody else paying the bills. They have a partner who can come in and help them support the mortgage so that or watch the kids so that they can come in and do what they need. And that is inherently a privilege for a
Mhm.
lot of people. Like, even if you're not neurodivergent, not disabled, you're still going to have that kind of like time crunch, right? And then you add those things on top of it, and then you could get into like the people of color, being censored by the algorithm. Like, how are you supposed to promote yourself when the algorithm doesn't want to show, the public a black person, right? And it's just like, well, how are they supposed to promote their books? Like that is, and like, I don't know. Like I've talked to my agent about queer books abroad. Like she's a foreign agent. She goes abroad and she sells books, and then she did like my one domestic deal for me. So she's not a domestic agent. She does foreign deals out in the world, and so she just went to I'm gonna. Is it pronounced Bologna? Bologna? But like it's not
Oh,
bologna. I know it's not. I'm just like, how do you pronounce that?
I think, but I don't
No.
know now. I don't know. I
I
just,
don't. It's one of those like reader accent things where I always read it and I'm like, oh yeah, that place. But like I can't
Yeah.
actually so she just went there
Yeah.
and did their book thing. But every time she comes back, she writes up a report for all of her authors of like, here's what I'm hearing about the foreign market and how it's functioning. And every time since I've been with her, it's been LGBT books are a really tough sell because LGBT books won't be published in XYZ countries because they are not supporting the gay agenda. They don't want gays in their books, right? They only want straight romances, you know? So because I write LGBT books, I face some of that when we go abroad. So like I was just in a, in an event with Travis Baldree, and he was talking about some of his foreign deals that he was doing, and he asked me some like, well, you've seen this with your foreign deals, and I'm just like, I'm not getting as many foreign deals as I think you are.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because like he had such a subtle undertone of LGBT and
Yeah.
it was not marketed that way
Yeah.
in his first book. And then in his second and third books, he doesn't have like his third book I think might have a little bit of like Viv and Tandri, but his second book was just Viv, with like again like that very subtle undertone of it that most publishers can just wave away or they can change, right? And my books are not that way. Like my
Yeah.
books are very solidly LGBT, so it's hard to sell that type of stuff abroad. So it is interesting to see the difference between like an LGBT author and a straight author and their popularity levels and how these books are selling abroad, so yeah, the business of publishing. It's kind of
It's
depressing.
when you think about it for too long,
Uh-huh.
it does
gets
something to your brain
gets
that
gets
can't
gets
be
real
undone.
sad. Yeah, it gets real
Yeah.
sad. Yeah.
Well, jump from that. Uh,
On a light note.
Cozy.
anyways,
Anyways.
what are you enjoying? We always ask people at the end, as you might know by now, that what they're enjoying at the minute. So is there anything you'd like to give a little shout out about, be it a book, TV show, movie,
Yeah,
podcast,
hang on.
anything?
Let's see okay, so I'm reading right now The Lighthouse at the Edge of the World by J.R. Dawson.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And that book is very, very good. It's almost like a love letter to Chicago, which is kind of cool. Like it's about a lighthouse that like heralds the dead of cross. Is it
Oh,
Like Michigan? It's Lake Michigan, right? I think
don't ask
the
us.
lake,
We're
the lake
European.
by yeah, I know. I guess that's so true. The lake
We're
by Chicago,
European.
but I should know. I'm pretty sure my wife would make fun of me if I didn't. But I'm pretty sure it's Lake Michigan. So there's like a lighthouse that like heralds the dead across, and instead of like the river Styx, it's like Lake Michigan, right? And so like they go, and so it's all the ghosts from Chicago that come through this lighthouse and then move on. And it's about the lighthouse keeper falling in love with a girl, like a living girl who comes there looking for her sister's soul. Because her sister died in a mass shooting. And it was very interesting to read because I feel like there's a lot of really fantastic details inside this book. Also, one of the things I loved like the guide souls, like the things that guide the souls through this journey are dogs. And all of the dogs, and I emailed, it's from my publisher Tor, and I emailed them and I was like, this book is really good. Like, I'm really enjoying this book. And they wrote back and were just like, yeah, all the dogs are actually our dogs. So, like, the author sent an email to the publisher and asked for all of their dogs and pictures and personalities. And then she wrote all of those dogs in as the guide dogs for the souls in the book. And they're the best part. Like, they're the best. I literally am having so much fun with all the dogs. Like, there was one that is a Yorkie, and the Yorkie, and like they specifically mentioned the Yorkie being an asshole, and I have a Yorkie who is also an asshole, and I was like, oh my god, like there's like a golden retriever, there's like a little hound dog, like there's like this really big like wolf hound, like just the best stuff. Like the dogs were great. So I'm reading that right now. I'm genuinely enjoying it. I'm almost done with it. I felt bad because they asked for a blurb like months ago, and I got through half of it and gave them like a halfway blurb, but I took forever to finish this book, not because it's not good, but because I was moving in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Lighthouse at the Edge of the World by J.R. Dawson. Very much enjoying.
Now I have to read that. That sounds so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It's also very sapphic, so you guys would love it.
Oh, I was just gonna ask.
Even
I was
better. Even
Yeah,
better.
perfect. Yeah.
gonna-
Well, thank you so much. This has been really
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
which is so much like with everything else. I'm so excited to get to the rest of the books. I just with the traditional publishing, with all the whole sorry, it's not going well. It's evening. With the whole series being now traditional, I have a really good excuse to get another edition and reread it. So thank you. Even
You're
though
welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, we redesigned the cover for Gilded Abyss because I was like, guys, I'm like, we got to do something different or no one's going to need to go buy this book like in this new version, And not that I need people to buy this book, but I also have an advance to pay back. And
Yeah.
like, since we're already going to have it, I'm like,
Gonna-
let's redo the cover. So I
Yeah.
think they're going to add the art from the original publication inside the book, in the same way they did with the Tomes and Tea series for the US versions. And then I think they're going to have a new cover, which is designed by the typographer for the Tomes and Tea series. So so good.
Amazing. Can't
Yeah.
wait. I actually haven't read this Gilded Abyss yet, so I'm very
Oh, well,
excited.
I do.
now will be the perfect time. In
Perfect.
November,
Yeah.
it's coming out. So
Well, is
yeah,
that
the
gonna
UK
be
cover
second?
actually is very, very beautiful too. So
Is there gonna be more from the series?
everybody asks that. Yes. It's a trilogy, and I have written book two. Everybody's like, where's book two coming? I'm like, it's done. Technically, it's been sitting on my hard drive for 6 months. It needs some pretty extensive edits before I send it to my publisher. They're planning for a Halloween-ish 2026 release for book two.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're going to be getting one book a year from this series, starting in November of this year. So
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, which I feel bad about because the people who bought that book like week one and have been waiting since 2023 to read
that
the
was
sequel, I'm
me.
like, I'm so sorry.
That's
I
fine.
feel so bad.
It's just really good, and I really love the arcane vibes. As arcane lover, it was
Yeah,
10 out
the
of 10.
arcane vibes honestly are on
Yeah,
point, and there
yeah,
were a lot of similarities. In book two, there's like time bubbles that they get to go
oh,
back into. So when they added like the time thing with Echo,
yeah.
I was like, oh man.
You manifested it on a
I
thing.
was like, oh man,
Good.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was really fun. I definitely had a great time with that series. I have some really cool plans for book three. I'll probably be writing it in beginning of 2026. That's my
Yeah.
rough schedule. I'm going to finish the cozy sci-fi trilogy this year and then move into Gilded Abyss and wrap that up next year. So
Exciting.
all good stuff.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much, and good luck with that. And
Yeah.
have a lovely rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate you inviting me on. Congratulations on 4 seasons and keep going.
Thank you so much. One more thing I have to say.
Ah,
I The fact that she wrote a book in under 2 weeks,
that's fucking unhinged.
I am so enraged. Like, again, good for her. Amazing. But fucking hell. I'm not capable of doing anything in 2 weeks. Are you joking?
10,000 words a day. That's too many words a day.
I think that happened to me only once. And I think it was only like 8,000 words a day. And I
Yeah,
happened
me
once.
too.
Yeah.
I think the only time I write 8,000 words is when I'm super close to finishing the
Yeah.
manuscript and I want to get it done.
Get it.
Otherwise, I'll be glad if I get between 3 and 4K.
Yeah.
That's too many words a day. I mean, she would get a lot of money for being a ghostwriter because it doesn't pay well, but it would do if you were doing it that frequently.
It's not about quality, it's about quantity.
That's exactly what it is.
Oh my God. What a superpower that is, though.
I know, I'm very jealous.
I know.
Oh well, us mere mortals just keep plodding along at our own pace. Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. We're
We're still doing Camp Bloom.
we are doing that.
It's still ongoing, and it ends at the end of April. And also, we're gonna be doing a giveaway of our amazing writer journals and companions.
Yep. The entrance of Camp Bloom. If you
Yeah,
submit a certificate to us, we'll have made a form by then. We haven't yet, but we will do.
it's still
So
time.
and I guess we can also announce that we'll be reducing camp
Oh, yeah.
to just twice a year because 4 times a year was a lot. And there's other things we want to do. We've been talking
Sure.
about an anthology that I'm getting excited about and I'd like to do.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, our next camp, if you didn't make this one, will be in the autumn.
Well, until next time.
Support women's rights,
That most importantly, support women's wrongs.
especially if they take a sword to their wedding.
Yes.
Oh,
Very jealous about that too. I'm jealous about a lot of things. I came to realize.
just kind of living the life we all want, really, isn't
Yeah. It's
it?
true. We shall see you later, alligator.
In a wall, crocodile.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. You can expect an episode every other Wednesday.
And be sure to expect lots of guests, including authors and queer creators.
While waiting for the episodes, feel free to check out our website, swordsandsuffix.com.
Be sure to submit to our forms if you're a queer creator to be featured on our blog or our monthly release lists.
You can also take part in Swords and Suffix and Scribbles, which is a monthly writing event to help you reach your goals.
And if you're just looking for a community that will be supportive and joyful, you can join our Discord server where most of our writing events take place, but also we just have lots of conversations and lots of fun.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, and TikTok, where you can find us as all kinds of versions of Swords and Suffix.